Pledge allegiance to the
flag
flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Okay, moving down the agenda. Public comments, we have one individual that has signed up, Mr. Jensen. Would like to address the board.
I want to thank Jim Stinson, Randy Evers, the staff. I live on Mayfair Grove, 23 Mayfair Grove. This is going on 35 years. We've had a drainage problem and a lily pad problem. And we've tried to get the lily pads out of the retention pond, which is right next to East Panther Creek. And it's been done for a number of years. This year, depending on who we talked to, they said it's never been done. It turns out that, and through investigation with Jim and Randy, that retention pond apparently has never been platted properly. There's no ownership of that. So therefore, no ownership, no budget to maintain it. And, but the good that came out of this is that, and I hope it's still, it's my understanding it's still in the budget that you're about to approve today, is the clean out of the drainage ditch for several hundred yards that has gone up over the time. That several years ago, I took out flood insurance because I could see this thing silting in and getting higher and higher. And the retention pond that I'm referring to used to be about 5 to 6 feet deep. Now you can walk across it without getting your feet wet. There's that much silt in it. And Hartley may remember about 10 years ago, you folks approved the, we've been having sinkholes in the storm drain area between on the easements from Mayfair Grove out to the drainage out there, and you came out and replaced it with concrete pipe and so forth. But that kind of aggravated the situation because the silt that came out of that, all the dirt is still in that retention pond. What I'm asking for is after you guys approve this budget, my next step is to go to Hughes Corporation, the township, whoever, to determine the ownership of that retention pond. Determine who owns that, then we can get the owner to put it in the budget to de-silt that silt pond. But it needs to be done, because when we have high rains coming through, that pond is backing up, and eventually it's going to start coming back towards our houses. And it was designed perfectly. Like I said, I've been here 35 years, and it's worked fine. It's getting to the point now that it's not where it was. It was just a simple situation. My next door neighbor, Jeff Johnson, is the county engineer. He explained to me the process that you come in with backhoes, whatever, in a dump truck and clean that stuff out. So to summarize, I appreciate getting it in the budget for the drainage ditch, but the next step is to try and get that retention pond done. And I may need your help in talking to people about who owns this darn thing. I mean, and right now I'm getting, it's like waking up two kids in the schoolyard who started to fight and they all pointed at each other, you know, and so we need to get off top dead center on that. And I'd appreciate it if at some point you hear from me, you'll know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you know of the history of who created that detention pond in the first place?
As a matter of fact, it was Ted White that used to live in 8 Mayfair Grove. We call it, I think it's the energy reduction.
Energy dissipator.
Energy dissipator, thank you. We call it the concrete dragons. And he got whoever it was back in 82, 83 to put that in as a way of increasing the home value, I guess, because we made it look like it was close to the lake. We have in that retention pond, it's got a bulkhead, just like Lake Woodlands does. So we know that Mud One doesn't own it, but we don't know who does own it.
So he did it at his own expense?
No, it was done by, who knows who did it. I mean, this was 35, 36 years ago. I don't know. And Ted's he's moved out, he's subsequently passed away. So I can't give you the history of that. It's probably in your record somewhere. But, those energy dissipators create the flow that puts the silt in that pond, and that's pond is full. It's full of dirt. And so its design capacity has been greatly reduced.
So the MCAD maps don't show who owns.
Apparently, that's what I've been told.
Okay, comment on this.
So that, once we get your project done, and I think Randy said it's gonna start, it's dependent upon the weather next year as to when they do it. It's about, I think, $50,000 budget item he put in there. And my thought process is, if we get that done, we need to finish it with this retention pond. Because then it takes away the problem. We're back to where we were back in 1983, 84, when the. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can't, according to the Open Meeting Act, we can't really comment on this, but if you'd like to address this later on and give us an update, we would appreciate it. So we need to put it on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, if there's any further discussion from staff, probably.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to address the board? All right, item number 3, consider an act request for adjustments.
Nothing this month.
Okay, consent agenda, receive, consider and act upon the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move.
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving to regular agenda, item number 8, review and act the district's financial 2022 and 23 operating budget.
Last month, we presented a draft budget. We have made some adjustments, tweaks, nothing that I think is too major. Just in general, you've got revenues projected at about 4 million and expenses at about 3.8 million. I think we published a tax rate of 7 cents based on information from the board last month. So with those opening general remarks, I'll answer any questions.
I make a motion that we accept the budget as printed out and you hand out.
Second that.
And the budget does include an increase in your retail sewer rate beginning January 1. And that rate would go up equivalent to what your wholesale sewer rate is. Can you remember what that number is?
5, gonna go up to 553 from 485.
Right. And then in your packet, there was what we call a typical residential customer usage price comparison. So that would be following the January 1 adjustment.
And this is 145,000 less excess at the end of the year than our previous budget.
The net result of that.
And I think we reduced your estimated revenue water sales.
Yes. That's what it was. Primarily.
Trying to zero in on what we call a not wet year, not dry year, a normal year.
Anybody have any other questions? All right, is there a motion, you said?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
A second, do you want to make the
Oh,
motion?
I think.
I made the motion.
I'll make the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item number 9, conduct a public hearing regarding the district's intent to levy the 2022 tax rate.
This is required by laws we've talked about in previous years. Adoption of the tax rates, 2-step process. First is to authorize publication of the notice of your intent to levy a maximum tax rate. That was done at your meeting last month. You authorized publication occurring at 7 cents. Your tax assessor collector has completed that publication. So now we need to adjourn the regular meeting and conduct a public hearing to receive any comments on the tax rate.
All right. Do I need to adjourn the meeting? Okay, I adjourn the meeting.
Open the public hearing for
All
comments.
right. Does anybody have any public comments? Any concerns, questions?
Then we can
Okay.
close the public hearing and re-adjourn the regular meeting and move on to the next item.
All right, item number 10, consider an act upon levying the district's 2022 tax rate.
So,
Any-
as discussed last month, the tax rate of 7 cents would all go to M and O since, of course, listed off all of its outstanding bond indebtedness. I need a motion to adopt the maintenance and operation tax rate of 7 cents for 2022.
I move that we do.
I'll second.
I'd like to discuss that. I mean, there's no, we can lower it if we want though, right?
Correct.
All right. Does anybody have any concerns of lowering it to 6.5 cents?
Yeah, I have concern. We've already approved a budget. And now you want to lower a tax rate, number one. Number two, we've seen property values increase like crazy over the last 2 years. They can go down just as fast. I'm seeing houses sitting there not being sold. And I don't think we should base our decision to lower taxes on the fact that house prices went up and for a couple of years. I think we're going to see some change in our economy with increase in our interest rates. That'll help a little bit, but probably not enough to cover a tax reduction. I think our consultant has said 7% tax is what we should go with, and that's why we have a consultant. I agree with their opinion. I don't think it's the time to reduce it.
A 0.5 cent would be, we would reduce our income by $54,322. We'd still have a surplus. Why we have a surplus is because the long-term planning from San Jacinto River Authority, the one that went through, not the most recent one, the previous one said that they were going to issue a $25 million bond. That would mean we would have to come up with $1.5 million, basically to pay our share without having 20 years plus interest on our bonds. And we've bought out of the last 2 San Jacinto River Authority bonds. But in the long run, the new one, San Jacinto River Authority, says that they need a lot more money than that. So at some point, we're going to probably have to bond. Their 10-year plan is very scary in how much it's going to cost us, because they're either going to combine the plants or they're going to, and there's a study on that now, or they're going to abort what they have at plant number 1 and redo the whole thing. And this is a tremendous expense, and that's all in the current 10-year plan from San Jacinto River Authority. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's pretty well.
Yeah. And so if they have a $25 million bond to keep us going until they start doing something with the plant, we can still buy out if we have enough money. And we do have enough money now to do that. Okay. And the $54,000 wouldn't make that difference. Okay. So what I'm saying is, if we want to reduce tax, it's certainly feasible and we can do it and still buy out of the next bond if it's only 25 million. And on our last grand accounting, we're about 5.8% of San Jacinto River Authority's Woodlands Division. So that's what I computed 1.5 million on.
It might be worth noting the previous buyouts were based on capacity. The bond that we are looking at, or the Sept River Authority is looking at for critical infrastructure renewal is not a capacity type bond. The thought is that it would be funded through water and sewer, retail water and sewer rates as a line item.
Well, we'd still be about the same, about 5.8. I think.
That's a revenue bond, is what you're saying.
I know we talked about this before, but as you discussed, where to land on your tax rate. Senate Bill 2 also, of course, plays into this. Y'all are a developed district, and so you are limited to a 3.5% increase each year without being subject to an automatic rollback election. So anytime you give up, and that's a policy decision on the board, but anytime you give up tax rate, it's pretty much a one-way street because 3.5% increase in revenue is pretty low. So it's a one-way street, and so you'll pretty much be giving that up for the future. And you do not have any remaining authority from your voters for issuing bonds. And I know you don't have, the River Authority has your substantial infrastructure, especially the mechanical stuff, but y'all still have sewer lines that are under 15 inches and water lines under 12, and you've got detention, as we talked about, detention and drainage that you maintain. So you still have some infrastructure that this district's responsible for that the River Authority's not. And you have some big ticket items in the future. You're going to pay for that out of your reserves. You're not going to be able to raise your operation tax because of Senate Bill 2. So you would have to issue, if it's more than what you have in reserves, then you would have to issue revenue bonds of your own and raise your water sewer rates to be able to pay for that. So that's why, y'all have kept a little healthier reserve being, more than 12 months, but there's a reason for that. We partly said you certainly have the ability in your budget this year, if you wanted to reduce it and still have a positive cash flow, it just does have some consequences down the road that y'all just, need to be aware of.
And the one that I had not figured is a legal requirement that if we lower it, we got to stay with that. So
That's hurt 39, I believe. They've gone so low and now they're
36
They're 36 and they're having to raise the rate.
for a bond issue. That's correct. They're raising it for a bond issue, and there's a way to not be subject to an automatic election if you're doing it for a bond issue, because they had some remaining bonding authority. They're out now, but y'all don't have that. So you couldn't issue bonds that wouldn't be subject and have a rate attached to that wouldn't be subject to the rollback election without having an election to get more bonding authority from your voters.
Now, the 3% applies to the actual tax rate. It does
Revenue.
not apply, because when you look on the table, it says 10%.
Yeah.
But that's just, the assessment is paper.
Right. It's a little confusing. It's based on revenue. So it's 3.5%. And it's based on the revenue generated on the average homestead. So it's not a bottom line 3.5% on all your revenue, because you've got a mix of different properties. You have homesteads, you have non-homestead residential properties, you have multifamily, you have commercial. So it's not just a 3.5% of your overall revenue. It's 3.5% on increase in revenue generated from the average homestead. So when the average homestead goes up, it goes up by more than 3.5%, then you're in a position of having to lower your tax rate to not be subject to an automatic election. Now, y'all, this year, I believe we had to use the increment, if I'm not mistaken, because you've got the unused increment from previous years. We talked about that last month. But 7 cents y'all can levy this year and still be in compliance with Senate Bill 2.
Okay. That was my concern when I saw the ad.
Yeah, it's because you had, it gets confusing, but the legislature allowed for you to use unused increments going back 3 years. And that's a fancy way of saying if Yeah, and the 2019 didn't count, so it's just 2020 and 21. So if, say, in 2020, you could have gone up in revenue by 3.5% and you went up by 0. Well, you can bank that 3.5% for a few years. And so y'all banked some, I can't remember which years it was, if it was both 21 and 20 and 21, but we went through that whole calculation when we were with staff going through your budget recommendations.
Okay,
And y'all had some unused increment from the prior couple of years to bank to this year to have your rate be the same.
okay. Thank you for explaining that.
We've already taken into consideration all those sewer repairs and those large ditch repairs.
Correct. in this
Correct. So
budget.
I mean, that's already in the
Correct. I'm
budget.
not talking
So,
about this year. This is just possible. You have infrastructure you got to maintain. Who knows what goes bump in the night or breaks 5 years down the road that you have to pay for. But you're right. This year, what is known, I believe staff is included in this
yeah,
budget.
it's all included. I don't know. I just think, we've got the surplus. We're financially sound. We've looked at everything. I mean, unless something drastic happens that, some force majeure happens out there. I mean, sure the residents would appreciate a reduction for a change from somebody.
Well, I'm also concerned that if, we talked to Mud 6 about consolidating, if they adopt their tax rate and we lower ours, we're going to widen that differential. And I'd like to keep in mind the possible future of trying again to consolidate with them because it only failed by a very, very few votes. And I don't think if we're talking 54,000 spread over the number of houses, and it's not going to make that much difference. But psychologically, there could be a problem by having a penny tax difference than a half a cent, which we have now. So I'd like to make the motion that we go with the 7 cent tax rate as proposed by the consultant.
Been moved and seconded, so.
All right. All those in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? 3-2. Motion passes.
Right, Bob, it's about $27.
All right, item number 11, approved an execution of the amended district information form.
To adopt that and record in the property records to reflect we've now adopted your 2022 tax rate, even though the rate is staying the same. We have to update that it's now the 2022 rate. Attached to that district information form is the notice to purchasers that is provided to folks when they buy property in the district. So it will be updated on that form as well.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, item 12, we see the San Jacinto River Authority report.
Yes, sir. Our monthly operating report is in your packet. One thing to add to that is as of September 1st, we did start the 50% surface water bleed from the woodlands. So that's ongoing. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer or get you the answers.
Yeah. Question on page 24 and 29 on the GRP division. I'm really concerned about the financials that I see there, especially the fact that we've got approaching $8 million in receivables. And I'm assuming this is all related to the litigation at Conroe and Quadvest.
Short pays, no pays. A little bit of everything.
Anything new, the possible settlement of that?
I'm not aware of anything. I'm not aware of anything new to report as far as any headway made. It doesn't mean there isn't. I'm not prepared to discuss the finance.
So are we at risk of defaulting on the bond payments?
No.
My understanding is no, not right now. We do have money to make the next bond payment in reserves. Beyond that, I can't.
Yeah, question. In case I get asked, what is the net cost to a typical resident of going to, from the 65-35 to 50-50 blend? Can you,
Yeah, I think it's in our packet. What is it?
Well, actually, there wasn't an increase over what other participants are paying that are receiving a different ratio. That was part of the benefit of this GRP budget, is that we could take a 50-50 blend with no incremental increase over what the other GRP participants are paying. Now, if I can do a calculation that if we just stayed on the 65-35, what that would have been, but I'd have to do that calculation and report back, but we can do it.
it might raise a question or two, but I'm trying to look here. It looked like it was a small amount.
Oh, it would be a couple of pennies.
Yeah, okay. I want to be able to say that with some authority.
I'll give you the exact number.
Yeah, I want to be able to say, yeah, now it's only
Later.
4 cents. So, and it saves subsidence and on and on and on the list goes, but I'd like to be able to hammer
I
that
can
home.
give you that.
Okay, thank you.
You don't have any more questions on the monthly operating report? Dan has a quick update for you all.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. Real quick update on the wastewater strategic plan. Your packet, I think it's page 32. There's a meeting summary from just one of our progress meetings with the consultant that took place on August 24th. We actually had another progress meeting yesterday. There is no meeting summary yet for that one. But what we've been working on over the past month and a half is really planning for the upcoming stakeholder meetings. So we added a stakeholder meeting here in September. So it'll be taking place on September 28th. That was at the suggestion request of multiple stakeholders, my directors. But the main focus on that meeting is to receive input from the stakeholders on our approach to developing these cost estimates and comparing them amongst various shortlisted alternatives. That's looking at what our assumptions are, what the input variables are, and how all that's coming together, what format or metrics we would present them to the stakeholder group. So we want to get some buy-in on that, receive any input. So once we have all the numbers plugged in for each of the alternatives, which are to be presented at the November 2nd stakeholder meeting, there'll be less discussion or questions on the approach, but more focused discussion on the results and path forward. We feel this kind of added stakeholder meeting will help improve the efficiency of this overall process and moving forward. One other topic for the September 28th stakeholder meeting is we'll have a short high-level presentation on the membrane bioreactor technology. That's something that there's still 2 active shortlist alternatives that utilize that technology. We want to make sure the stakeholder group and others understand what that is, how it differs from what we have currently as a conventional technology, and what the potential pros and cons moving forward with potentially moving forward with an MBR technology. So give a little bit more background on that. Any questions?
Yes. Is it appropriate to assume that we are looking more favorably at replacing in place plant number 1 than the other alternatives?
I would say that is yet to be determined. I think that's still, all those shortlisted alternatives are still out there, and until we probably see numbers here in November, I don't think anybody's willing to throw out where we may be heading. So there is personal opinions, let's say.
Yes,
I'm not gonna.
I understand. So it is not appropriate to assume that that is the direction we are leaning.
I would say not at this time.
Okay,
We're open to all the shortlisted alternatives.
but we have a scenario in which we do keep on number 1. That's a scenario.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So that's what we've been referring as the baseline.
Yes.
And that's both for plants 1 and 2.
Yes.
Or go and replace with conventional
Yeah, my opinion is plant one will definitely be there, whether it's rebuilt or consolidated with two. I think in all likelihood, one is going to still stay there.
Thank you for being one of the stakeholders. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Summer, you have a-
I just have a quick announcement. We had several requests for tours. So, on page 32 of your packet, we do have a surface water treatment plant tour for Thursday, October 6th. And we also have a tour of wastewater treatment plant 1, on October 20th. And also, in addition to that, in case you haven't seen it, Jace was a guest on Hank Think Tank's podcast last week. That link is available. If you're interested, can I send that to you? We can send it to Shelly and she can send it out to all you guys. It's about an hour to 15 minutes. But it's really great if you have time to watch that.
And I think the last 30 minutes, if you don't want to watch the entire hour presentation, because the first part is on what is SJRA and what they do and so forth, and you pretty much know that. But the last part, last 30 minutes, he gets into the GRP fight and the subsidence issue that's going on. And it's also appropriate that tonight, Quadvest is sponsoring a public water forum at the Randall Reed Stadium. Starts at 6:30. And the speakers will be Hank Vatt, who runs this podcast, James Spigner, and Simon Cicada. And there's a fourth one. I can't remember who the fourth is, but I think he's also with the board of directors of Lone Star. And it's certainly going to be presenting their viewpoint of why they're not paying GRP and why nobody else should pay GRP if they're not getting benefit from SJRA. So I may or may not be speaking at that meeting tonight, depending on how badly I am outnumbered and how much support I might have. So if anybody is interested in going, I will be driving and would love to have company and support for that meeting tonight.
I would recommend you see that video. It's very good. It's excellent.
Before we move on, circling back to the difference, if we had stayed on a 65% groundwater, 35% surface water ratio, it would have been $3.13 instead of $3.20.
Okay, that gives me what I need to know, just ammunition. It relates to these issues that you're dealing with. And I think there's a political election coming up and.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People are talking.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Update on Spring Creek detention.
We have a stakeholder funding partner progress meeting actually this afternoon. It's been a few months since we've had one for the project, and really we've been working on and leading up to working with our funding partners on decision for path forward for the study. We ran into some hurdles there. So what has been developed is a decision matrix of about 4 or about 6 different alternatives and on path forward for the study, pros and cons of each, and that will be what is discussed today. So I don't have.
So what time and where is that meeting?
So
I actually sent you an email this morning with the information.
Yeah.
And if anybody else would like to attend, we can send that to you as well. I know Bob had been attending some of the past. It's at 2 p.m.
2 p.m. There is a virtual call-in, but also it's in person up at our FJRA's General Administration Building. And then if anybody is interested in that decision matrix, Jim should have a copy of that. And if you get with him, he'd be more enrolled.
You know, I'd like to make a suggestion. It's not our district, but I'm sure the people in Creekside would like to hear what's going on.
Emil Jacobs will be, he's been their representative.
Yeah.
He will be, he was invited.
But I think it'd be good if someone from SJRA went down, maybe told them what's, the study, what's happening, what's been happening and so forth. I think they'd like to see maybe there is some outside interest that's being, put forth on this effort and what's happening.
I think, yeah, once this information is presented, then we and SGRA can have something.
I know they have a village association down there. Maybe you just go address them and invite the residents, just send them an update.
Yeah, and I will say, through the grant that we received for this, we're required to have 3 public meetings. We did our first one up in Waller County. There will be a public meeting located here in the Woodlands region at some point too. That is to be scheduled. So that's definitely something else we would promote throughout the community.
Yeah, but I'm sure, on the 5th anniversary of Harvey, those people are still concerned that they're not any better off now than they were 5 years ago. At least you're gonna let them know that something is being looked at or something is being done or trying to be done.
All I had on Stone Creek.
Thank you very much. Item 14, attorney's report.
Only item there, you'll see under the trustees report that I did mention that we are looking into RNS 60, your policy regarding delinquent accounts and turnoffs, or an alternative to providing door hangers. I think the cost of those, staff has indicated, are getting pretty high. We've looked at the TCQ rules, the PUC rules and case law, and don't see a legal requirement that the door hangers be physically delivered as opposed to being provided by mail. They need to be provided one way or the other. So we'll be working to see if there are some other alternatives to be able to get the notifications out so that people get the required notice, but the district can do it in a more cost effective manner. Our policy would need to be revised if we go that route, because right now it says by delivery or certified mail. Certified mail, I think, is going to be difficult to rely on solely because people can just say, no, I don't accept it. And then you don't have any evidence that you provided notice. So we'll need to rework that policy to some extent, but I did want to bring that to y'all's attention. That's all I have under item number 14. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Item 15, receive and act upon staff information regarding the upcoming MCAD Board of Directors election form.
We received notice that one of the directors is no longer serving. I think may have moved out of the area. So on a kind of a short time fuse, we were notified that all the taxing entities, including your MUD, can nominate someone to be considered for that replacement on that board position. In your packets today, we have a resolution. Should you like to put forth a nominee?
I'd like to put forth a nominee, Walt Liszewski. I think would be eminently qualified to do that.
Second,
Yeah.
no, nominations don't have to be seconded. So that's good.
Great.
You have to vote on it?
No,
No.
No, at this board does. Yes.
Going to other nominations are closed.
that's right. If no other nominations cease. And I move it be approved by unanimous consent.
Second.
So approved.
And if there's no objection, it is done so.
No objection.
All right. That it then for that item?
I believe so. Brian,
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Item 16, discuss the notice of surface water conversion rate increase e-blast.
We
Okay.
received a request from Walt to put this on your agenda for discussion today.
Yeah, I guess I was the one that, I'm sure a lot of people were shocked when you saw this. I mean, I thought we had talked about that we understand what SJRA's issues are with the city of Conroe, Magnolia, and We also understand their operating cost issues with materials, labor. And I thought our discussion was pretty focused on the fact that we agree that, there should be increase to compensate for your operating cost issues, but not for your legal issues. And when this came out, I was just floored when I saw this because
Yes, it really, it's the bonds that are the critical issue. That if we don't have enough money, we can't pay the bonds.
And I think, just to clarify some of the numbers, the 17-cent increase that the trustees did approve was primarily related to power, cost and power, and chemicals. Now, and I think what may have been overlooked by some is embedded in the GRP rates for the last couple of years have been a $2 million or about a 10-cent per 1,000 rate to cover litigation expenses. That is in the rate.
That's in the 303.
That's correct. But the rate, the 17-cent increase is not enough, in my opinion, and I think others will tell you, to continue to make the bond payments. At some point, the bond payment will be at risk at that rate.
At 320?
With the no pays and short pays factored in, yes.
At the 320, you say it's still at risk.
That's right.
so how does this become our problem?
Because we participated in the development of the groundwater, along with, 90 others?
Yes, sir. It's, what is it, 88 participants?
88, it went down to 88. And we're part of that group that pledged to pay the bonds.
But they have a separate contract with each one of those entities, correct?
Yes.
Right. It
Okay,
would not,
and
it
so
would not.
you're asking me to pay for somebody else's shortcomings is what you're doing. And I don't think the residents of the Woodlands should, if the resident, if the Woodlands was not paying you, then I would understand completely. But, just because Conroe is not paying their fair share, or Magnolia, or any one of the other entities, I don't think that the residents of the Woodlands should have to pay for that.
And at this rate, they are not. They are covering the litigation expense, but we are not collecting enough money from our customers to fully fund the short pays and the no pays.
But the rate is, I think we talked about, the rate is elevated because of the historical short pays. But I think if that's the rate that GRP sets and the Woodlands doesn't pay it, then we're, not in compliance with the agreement either. So
Yeah,
we can talk about that more in closed session if you like, but that's a whole.
I mean, we're acting like the federal government with the student loans. That's exactly what we're doing. You took out a loan and you can't pay it, so now you want me to pay it for you. And that's what we're asking the residents to do.
Well, I mean, I think the legal expenses for the River Authority, and I can't speak for them, but in conversations that we've had between MUDs and the River Authority, is that those expenses for litigation costs are being incurred because the River Authority is doing what it's contractually obligated to do under its bond covenants with the purchasers of those GRP bonds to go and pursue participants and contractual participants that are not paying in accordance with the contract. So it's not debt forgiveness. It's debt collection, activity to go and collect on those groups that are not paying in accordance with their contracts.
And is there a provision in that debt collection process to collect the litigation cost on top of what they actually owe?
And that's an SGRA question. Got litigation counsel that's pursuing those claims. That would be a question. That would be a question for them. We can route that through staff to get that answer for you.
Was the wording in the flyer approved by WWA?
Yes,
So our input as MUD one didn't necessarily reflect the feelings of the rest of the MUDs. Is that correct? Perhaps we talked about it and felt that way, that, you know, they should not have the litigation costs in there. I think the wording could have been a little bit better. But if it was approved, we're only one of, 10 other MUDs that provide the input
well,
and the
to me, it
decisions.
wasn't formally
out of our
approved
hands.
and routed. It was a management decision, my decision.
Okay,
Yes.
so I mean, that's one of the frustrations of being in just MUD one rather than being on the trustees board.
I don't know. I just think it's wrong. I just do. I just think it's wrong that we should even impose any expenses on the MUD one residents or the other 9 MUD residents in the Woodlands water to pay for this litigation.
Well, and I agree with you in principle. But I don't know whether we really have a choice. As a bond default would be unthinkable and would affect the credit rating of SARA and the MUDs as well. And I hold out hope that there will be some settlement that will, if not resolve the situation, make it less severe.
Just one point of clarification on that. So the bonds are issued by the GRP division as revenue bonds. So if there is a default, which there may be at some point, because there's still not enough revenue and the short pays become too significant, we're not driving that train. But if that happens, that would be a default on those revenue bonds by the GRP division. We've been told by the River Authority that that should not affect the Woodlands division credit rating, which would impact the Woodlands MUDs through the interest rate that the Woodlands division would be able to achieve on bonds to fund improvements to Woodlands division infrastructure. There would be no direct impact on the credit rating of any of the individual MUDs. Because these are SGRA bonds to the GRP division, but we're told by the GRP division, from the River Authority overall, that with these bonds being issued specifically as revenue bonds from the GRP division, that it should not have a negative impact. If that ultimately comes, with a lot of ifs in this scenario, but if that were to occur, it would not impact the credit rating of the Woodlands division, and therefore the cost of borrowing that the Woodlands MUDs would be responsible for through payment of wholesale water and sewer rates for infrastructure improvements to our facilities.
I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see a default but maybe it'll bring it to a head. Because it's not being resolved now and the meter just keeps going and the residents just keep paying for it. And I think that film last night I watched with Jason, and I think that's the comment that Heeman made. Maybe it does come to that.
And it may.
To finally close the thing out.
And it may come to that, and we'll have to see what the unintended consequences of a default would be. Does it result in mothballing the plant and just having the debt service be paid and the state getting involved as a purchaser of the bonds to go and enforce the contract? That could be a possible result, but does that help the folks in the Woodlands who are concerned about subsidence? No, because now you've got a mothballed surface water plant and we're on 100% groundwater. So there could be unintended consequences if we reach that point that we just don't know yet.
Well, I'm sure we're not going to resolve the issue here, but I just wanted to put it on the agenda and at least let our view, or at least mine, how I feel about it. I just don't think it's right. And I'm assuming you have procedures in place that in the future, everything will be reviewed before it goes out.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any other comments or questions or? All right, let's move on. General Manager's report.
A couple items from the trustee meeting. We did have a request from two candidates running for the Lone Star Groundwater District Board. Request to introduce themselves to the trustees, James Ridgway and John Yours. I think President Bob Lutz extended the offer publicly to any other candidates for Lone Star that would like to come and present to the board. He would welcome that. We also approved our Woodlands Water Agency fiscal year 2023 budget. I think a noteworthy part of that was we will be charging customers 50 cents for electronic credit card payments, electronic drafts, so that we are being charged 85. So the Budget Finance Committee wanted to split that, if you will, with the customer to reduce our costs. So they will be, customers will be picking up a 50-cent charge for that convenience fee. And I think if you make credit card payments, electronic payments, even restaurants now are starting to charge extra for credit card fees. So it's kind of a trend that we're seeing to put some of that expense back in.
Are you talking about a debit card and a
Yes.
credit card, but not an automatic withdrawal from your?
Well, all payments through the website. So it could be auto pay or
Oh.
single.
But if it's directly from a bank account, that's,
I don't think that we use the bank accounts on the website. So
Okay,
no.
so that,
Yeah.
okay.
so what's the other choice? Just to mail a check?
Chad, call in our IVR line, use ACH receiver on your own bank's website. We don't charge for that.
So there's no charge if I go online with my bank and
Correct.
they pay you.
This
There's
is
no
only
charge.
our website that
Okay.
Comes in play.
It's-
You can also pay on WaterSmart. There's no fee there as well.
I reported we had a nice compliment email from one of our customer service field guys. Always nice to get that. Also reported that I've had a meeting, couple of discussions with the University of Houston and about in their geoscience department. They have some technology, called satellite technology, that really has some interesting data on subsidence in South Texas. They've done some analysis from South Texas, from the Houston, Galveston area, all the way up through College Station. And so they are working up a proposal to see if we might want to develop a partnership in Montgomery County to look at some of the detailed subsidence that they've collected. So we'll have more on that soon. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Item 18. Staff update on the automated metering infrastructure program.
Yeah, so we are inching our way towards the finish line. They're slowly but surely. We've got about 60 or so residential meters to go. These are kind of the troublesome meters. Trees have grown up around the boxes. Roots are squeezing the boxes. So we got a crew going around, cutting all that stuff out. We may have to move the meter, do some pipe modifications to get the new one in. So that's kind of, they're not going nearly as fast with this last 50 or 60. But we're hopeful we'll be done soon, and then the warranty will start for the entire week.
Good.
And how has affected our rereads?
You know, I don't have it in front of me, but Noreen will tell you that there's single digit rereads every month now. It's very, very small.
Where we had hundreds during peak summer months
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So it's a savings for us, staff savings.
I think John Geiger is trying to come up with a program to drive more people to sign up for the customer portal and get involved in the website. Two that have already signed up. We're hopeful to get a whole lot more. Once we get all the meters in, I think that's the next goal.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Mike. Number 19, trustees report. Any comments? Hartley?
Yeah, I would like to emphasize on page 49 at the top that John Yor and James Ridgway are running for two separate positions on Lone Star. And they're not running against each other. And there are other candidates, but they did appear before the board and they are expressing attitudes towards subsidence that are in line with what our board would like. So you might encourage your people to look closely because the person we have currently representing us is typical of politicians today that aren't for anything, they're just against something. And that's the problem we have with our political situation. That they get elected because they're against something. And these two people are not against anything, they're for something, and I'm not speaking in favor or against them. You can make up your own mind on it, but they did appear. And there are no other things that have not been covered by the general manager. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you. Item number 20, recess in the closed session. We don't have the need for that. 21, reconvene. All right, 22. Any items for future you'd like to discuss?
I think from us.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Move.